of Smithers' podcast with our industry experts. Today I'm joined with Phil Mango, our in-house Nonwovens industry expert, who's been working with Smithers since 2008. Hi, Phil.
Hey, how are you?
So you're joining me today to discuss our latest Nonwovens report, the future of global nonwoven wipes to 2029. Why is this an interesting and important topic for us?
Well, I think it's an interesting topic today, especially because I think we're about to see a change in the actual growth of this market, or the growth rate of this market that has been growing pretty steadily for over 2 decades. And I think for the first time in those 2 decades, we're starting to see what may be a cusp where the rate of increase is starting to slow for the first time. And there are a variety of reasons for that. But I think it's a really significant event in this market. One of the things that we can't determine right now, but we will in the next few years be able to determine, is whether this trend is actually a permanent trend towards slower growth, or if it's just a temporary trend based on a lot of external factors in the marketplace today.
You sort of touched on it briefly there, but what are the key trends that are affecting that changing growth rate?
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing. So typically, when you think of trends affecting a market like global nonwovens wipes, you think of things like consumer demand, consumer desires, even performance products and properties that either a consumer or even an industrial or institutional user uh, desires. But a lot of the effects on the market today are external factors. Things like COVID-19 in 2020 had a significant effect on the wipes, global nonwovens wipes market, especially different segments. I mean, we all know what happened with disinfecting wipes in 2020, where they couldn't be found and the demand was 2 to 3 times what it would normally be. But there were other wipes that were affected, like healthcare wipes in general, like the food service industrial wipes and the janitorial industrial wipes, which were negative. So COVID had a major effect on the wipes market in 2020 and disrupted the normal growth patterns of the market. Then, but when COVID was pretty much accounted for in 2022, late 2021 and early 2022, Russia invaded the Ukraine, and that set off a whole rash of additional factors affecting the market. First, there was security, energy security and supply issues. There was global inflation, which skyrocketed, and then followed by economic growth globally, which slowed noticeably. Then, of course, China has been a major driver for this marketplace in Asia, and its growth has slowed independently of the rest of the world's global economic issues. The Hamas attack on Israel didn't help the market either, setting off fears of a more wider conflict and energy issues, as well as major transportation issues with the Red Sea essentially closed. Combine that with a drought in Panama, and you have major transportation issues for the market. All of these external factors have had a much larger effect on the wipes market than any changes in consumer or institutional demand. And that's the real question when we talk about trends. Is the slowing in the growth of the wipes market dependent on these external factors only? And when they sort of resolve themselves, will the market resume growing at an increase at the rate that it has for decades? Or is there more of a permanent change here, where some of the damage done to the market is going to be permanent, and that we're starting to see the very beginning of a slowing in the growth rate of the market? So that's the thing that has been the most significant trend in the nonwoven wipes market. It's the external factors and the effects that they're having on this, rather than any fundamental change in consumer demand.
Great, Phil. Thank you. So I suppose looking at the market as a whole, if we look internally at the market, what are the technical innovations that we can expect to see in this sphere over the next 5 years?
So interestingly, I feel there has been more technical innovation in the last few years, 5 years, let's say, and there has been in the previous, say, decade or two, mainly because of regulations in many cases. Regulations sometimes can be a catalyst for innovation. Good example is the EU's single-use plastics directive, which is probably one of the most significant drivers of technical innovation in the global nonwovens wipes market today. And that sounds kind of strange because it's the European Union's single-use plastics directive, but it's had an effect well beyond Europe. I mean, North America and Asia both have already begun making changes in the technology and their product mix and the way they address products uh, well before any direct regulatory effect on them. So so some of these technical innovations, I mean, just a few. I mean, there are new processes, parted what they call spun lace, hydro entangled wet laid, hydro entangled air laid. All are new spun lace processes which address plastics free products. There's other new products like cellulosic binders for air laid, biodegradable polypropylene and polyester for spun laid products, and some spun lace products. And then there's new biodegradable polymers like polyhydroxyalkanoates, which are plastics but biodegrade. Um, there's blends of polyhydroxyalkanoates with polylactic acid. And there's even hydrophobic cotton. So there's been a whole repertoire of new processes and products that have addressed the need for, first I'll say, plastic free, but even more general, sustainable. There's the whole flushable wipes uh, segment as well, which is fast growing and consumer desired segment. And then finally, I would say, COVID helped start this with the disinfecting wipes, but there's been a lot of work in disinfecting wipes as well. A lot of innovation with new substrates, which are just more sustainable, new disinfecting chemicals, which are less environmentally impactful or are developed with renewable resources. So there's been a lot of work in a lot of different segments in wipes.
You touched on it very briefly there, Phil, but how are regulations affecting this market?
So, like I said, I think of them sometimes as a catalyst for innovation because, regulations, depending on how well they are crafted, and can either be, just a side note or can be, like I said, important. One of the things about the single-use plastics directive was that it had a couple of things that a lot of other regulations didn't have. Um, it actually centered on something that was well defined, plastics in single use products, and then it actually had some repercussions for not following the regulation with the extended producer responsibility, where producers of wipes, for instance, with plastic fibers like polyester, would be responsible for cost of cleanup. That really had an effect beyond just, there's been sustainability regulations around for many years, but it was really the single-use plastics directive that had a direct effect and had an immediate effect pretty much on the marketplace. In the few years that it's been out, I mean, probably 50 to 60% of the European market has already switched to plastic free products. And the rest of the world, like I said, even though they're not even directly affected, now are already reacting, and all of the product development or much of the product development in other regions is centered around either plastics free or more sustainable products. Um, Other regulations, like I said, we talked briefly about them, but it has driven real innovation in the marketplace.
So focusing into the industry itself, the nitty-gritty parts of the
Mhm.
wipes market, what areas are growing the most in this industry at the moment?
So there, it's kind of interesting. The market is sort of split between what I would consider sort of semi-commodity products, which is baby wipes and maybe some industrial wipes are more like semi-commodities. They grow slow, but they're very large in size. So uh, those uh, those markets grow very slowly, though it's regional as well. I mean, the Asian baby wipe market grows fast, much faster, for instance, than Western European or North American baby wipes. Those markets are sort of the baseline for nonwovens wipes growth. If those markets don't grow because they're so large in volume, it can have a disproportionate effect on the overall growth. But in the actual mature markets, developed markets like North America, Western Europe, it's really the personal care wipes that seem to be growing the fastest today, um, and more of the what I would consider more of the specialty wipe segments in home care as well. So for instance, in personal care, moist toilet tissue is growing at a rapid rate. You've also got the adult incontinence and some of the health care related wipes that are growing rapidly. Um, Even the cosmetic and facial wipes in certain markets are growing rapidly. So the most rapidly growing segment is personal care. But within home care and even industrial wipes, there are sub-segments that are growing rapidly. And in home care, disinfecting wipes, even though they're not growing anywhere near the rate they were during COVID, they're still growing at a higher rate than they were prior to COVID. And then when you look at industrial wipes, the food service segment is still somewhat depressed, but there are other segments in the market. The healthcare segment is still growing well. Specialty industrial wipes, like for clean room and specialty cleaning needs, they're growing well as well. Baby wipes are a regional market in North America and Europe, very slow growing. In Asia, still growing at a healthy rate to make the entire wipes market still have the volume base that they need. So I would say that that sort of describes the growing and non-growing segments of.
What are the areas that are really struggling in this market as the marketplace changes and consumer demands evolve and the landscape evolves? What are the areas that are really struggling to keep up in this market?
Yeah, so the number one market that I see struggling today is probably food service in industrial wipes. I mean, it seems like there's been and janitorial wipes and industrial wipes. I mean, it seems that COVID started a trend within the consumer uh, psyche that has stayed permanent. Um, the way we dine out has changed. The food delivery services have grown at an above average rate, and so consumers have learned. They learned to get food delivered rather than to go out. They learned to cook more at home. I mean, that's an interesting trend that we've seen as well. And in general, just the whole outside dining growth rate has slowed significantly. And so food service wipes, which depend on sort of external dining rather than internal dining, as well as things like cafeterias and schools and things like that, um, has really struggled since. And it's since 2020, and it has never recovered to where it was prior to COVID. And projections are that it's going to be a slow grower even for the next several years. The same thing's true about janitorial and uh, industrial wipes as well, because how many office buildings have closed permanently? How many people now work at home more than they ever did? There's been a lot of reduction in the need for offices and institutional cleaning, and that's hurt the janitorial supply. Because it's such a broad market, the janitorial isn't suffering quite as much as food service, but those two segments have been the hardest hit.
Great, Phil. Thanks ever so much.
You're welcome.
To find out more on the wipes market, be sure to buy Smithers' new market report, which is due for publication at the end of April.